Battle of Fate. Dacheldor and Shakarok rocketed through the hole in the ceiling to chase Daramal. Doomsday remained behind in case Daramal's plan was to return. All three experienced each other's actions as if one being. The living weapons saluted Dacheldor as he flew. They would be waiting to serve him upon his return. The realm lords around them hated them, but knew better than to attack. Dacheldor and Shakarok followed Daramal to a clearing where he stood, seemingly waiting for them, with his obsidian sword ready. Shakarok's blade slammed into Daramal's as he landed firmly on the ground. The two exchanged blows, each parrying the other with their perfectly matched swordsmanship. They struck again and again. Their blades hummed as they slid off one another. Dacheldor landed a short distance behind Shakarok and fired black electricity at Daramal. The tentacles on his back moved to absorb the blast, keeping Dacheldor's strike from landing. At the same time, the attempt kept Tezencrul busy defending, leaving Daramal and Shakarok more evenly matched. Daramal lifted his arm to fire electricity, but Shakarok easily evaded. He now had knowledge and abilities formerly belonging to Dacheldor, as well as abilities formerly belonging to himself from past timelines. He swung his blades, flames covered them, but Daramal parried his attacks with the sword held firmly in his possessed arm. Shakarok began to notice a pattern to Daramal's swings. Before each, he lifted his arm high. The next time he did this, Shakarok intercepted, slamming one of his blades into Daramal's sword, keeping it aloft, and sliding the other between Daramal's shoulder and bicep, lopping his arm clean off. The wound cauterized from Shakarok's fire. Daramal's possessed right arm fell to the ground a few feet from where he was standing. It still clutched his obsidian longsword. Dacheldor's gaze turned to it. In all the years the arm had been attached to Daramal, no one had ever been able to lop it off. Only a superior swordsman like Shakarok could land such a blow, and only a flaming sword could cauterize the wound in time to keep the arm from reattaching. It was as if Shakarok had been destined to lop off the cursed arm. Dacheldor could feel the soul of the arm pulsing, hungering to reattach to Daramal. He wondered if he could devour the soul inside the arm, destroying it forever and ending any chance Daramal had of using it to free other Illithal. He reached his own arm out toward it, but hesitated. Shakarok swung his swords at Daramal, but the tentacles on his back surrounded him, like a protective barrier. In retrospect, Shakarok wondered if Daramal may have purposely moved into the position that had caused his arm to be chopped off. He wondered if all Daramal had really wanted was to be rid of it. Inside the barrier of tentacles, Daramal held the burnt stub where his right arm used to be. Dacheldor's gaze became focused. He reached his left arm steadily toward Daramal's severed limb and concentrated. Orange energy expanded around the arm as the soul inside was pulled from it into Dacheldor. The arm turned to ash and blew away in the wind. Dacheldor prepared himself for the memories of the arm to enter him, but they did not. He could feel the power of the soul he had devoured, but it was not absorbed into him. Instead, it latched onto his left arm, the same arm he had used to pull in the soul, and the entire arm started to burn. The armor surrounding Dacheldor's left arm exploded, revealing his entire arm was turning pitch black. He screamed and fell to his knees. The pain was excruciating. He could feel the soul taking over his fingers, then his hand, then his forearm. All the while, those parts of his arm turned black. It moved up toward his shoulder, and he placed his other hand on it. He concentrated all his energy on stopping the spread of this invading entity. Shakarok turned to Dacheldor. The tentacles surrounding Daramal lifted, and he fired black electricity from his one remaining arm. Shakarok fell to his knees, paralyzed. Both he and Dacheldor were now immobilized. Daramal strode over to Dacheldor with a wide smile and said, "Now both prophecies describe you, my former master." Through intense concentration, Dacheldor managed to stop the spread of the invading soul at his shoulder. His left arm took on a permanent black color. The soul he absorbed now took permanent residence there. Daramal recited the two prophecies Tezencrul had shared with him. He delighted in revealing Dacheldor was once again the destined destroyer of the cosmos. This time, the prophecy was not some misinterpretation made by Bylon, or a manipulation by Uzulkri. This was the true prophecy of the Illithal, known once to the keepers of the cosmos. Dacheldor's destiny was unavoidable, and Daramal's hand had delivered it to him. Shakarok was still paralyzed, watching and listening. Dacheldor felt a new kind of pain, as the arm pulled energy from him. His dark black tentacles faded from sight, as if the rage that had fueled them was being turned into food for the arm. Dacheldor's eyes widened as he realized what the arm was consuming. To become an Illithal, an ancient needed to fuse with an Etten, then sacrifice the souls of countless mortals. That was how Dacheldor had done it. When Baratonis had been alive, before he had become a force possessing Daramal's arm, he had been an ancient and an Etten. All he needed to become an Illithal was the fuel of souls collected by a being like Dacheldor over the years, Fuel Dacheldor had plenty of. The pain Dacheldor was now feeling was the soul inside the arm becoming an Illithel. Dacheldor was now the prophesized Illithel with another Illithel living in his arm. "It's so obvious," Daramal mused. "When I had possession of the arm, I could barely open the seal that held Tezencrul, a single Illithel. To free them all, the arm had to become an Illithel." This revealed to Dacheldor who Daramal had freed. Tezencrul had mastered many beings who had crossed Dacheldor's path before, even many he had consumed. Though he was the creator of the physical aspects of the cosmos, Tezencrul ultimately was a destroyer. "You've doomed us all," Dacheldor shouted. "No," Daramal said. "I've simply followed through with my true destiny, to make you destroyer of the cosmos, to watch you suffer as you realize you never had a chance to deny fate. I am now free. You will never be." The black tentacles on Daramal's back faded from sight. As they did, his arm grew back, no longer possessed. His own. His eyes rolled back in ecstasy. Shakarok tried to move, but the electricity was still coursing through him. It was obvious to him Daramal had set up both their paralyzed states so he could gloat. The instant he could move again, his aim was to remove Daramal's head. Daramal lifted his arm and his obsidian longsword flew into his grasp. He then explained there was one final piece to his plan that had yet to be completed. He called it his master stroke. He rocketed into the sky, seemingly returning for the Realm Lord School and leaving the two behind. Dacheldor felt a strange pulse and the arm stopped pulling in energy. His senses told him the soul inside was now an Illithel, like him, yet the soul was content to remain attached to him. He regained control of himself and could even control the movement of the arm. Aside from the arm's now black color, there was nothing to distinguish that anything about Dacheldor had changed. If its aim was to free all the Illithel and destroy the cosmos, it seemed content to wait to do so another day. Dacheldor's armor reformed around the arm. He now appeared the same as ever. No one outside of him, his disciples, and Daramal would know about the arm unless he chose to show it to them. Dacheldor ran to Shakarok's side and waved his hands over him. The electricity coursing through him dissipated and Shakarok stood. The two knew stopping Daramal was imperative, but by this time, Daramal was already back at the school and had been there for some time. They were relying on Doomsday to stop him now. Doomsday and Darkfire both faced Daramal, but were tricked by his mastery of illusion. Though Doomsday saw through it, Darkfire did not and was driven to battle her, thinking she was Daramal. It took everything Doomsday had to keep the Valant from destroying her. She was finally caught in an orb of his creation and teleported far away from the scene. Daramal decimated a battalion of Realm Lords on the way to his goal and managed to elude Kara, Vala, and the headmasters. He reached the laboratory where the machine to create aberrations was housed. Rewiring it and redesigning it through transmutation, he created a masterful time machine. He stepped in and reversed time. Time and space warped. Shakarok and Dacheldor saw time moving backward all around them, and were powerless to move. Time reversed faster and faster. Days reversed in seconds, then months reversed in moments. Finally, the reversal of time stopped, and the two stood in the same place on the planet they had previously, but now on bland, black rock. They wondered how far back they had traveled, realizing it was far enough back that the planet was just forming. Shakarok pointed up in the sky. Several large comets were headed toward the planet's surface. Dacheldor gasped as he realized what this meant. Shakarok's eyes widened as Dacheldor's thoughts became his. There was only one time in history where comets had fallen on the planet that would later house the center. Dacheldor knew the date of the comet strike well. When he and Darkfire had learned of it, they had marveled at how close the occurrence was to the date of his own birth. Dacheldor was dumbstruck. Daramal had moved time far enough back that Dacheldor had never been born. Though he obviously still existed and, as an aberration, he always would, his entire history had been erased. No one aside from the few aberrations he knew would ever know who he had been. His impacts on reality were wiped out, and not being able to be born and grow again, he would never be able to duplicate this history. The beam formerly nicknamed Pride was now unknown throughout the cosmos. Tears fell from his eyes as he realized one more shocking element of the whole sadistic story. He fell on his knees and screamed into the sky. Shakarok knew exactly what was killing Dacheldor inside. In addition to all of Dacheldor's accomplishments being wiped away, his children were gone too. Since it would be impossible for him to step through his early life, it would also be impossible to simulate his early relationships. There was no way his children would ever be born. Dacheldor's life was completely destroyed. In his mind, he may as well have died.